go out to someone who needs no introduction, the great Ann Coulter. Ann, welcome.
Hello, good to be here.
Good to have you. Now, one of the reasons, Ann, I asked to go persuade you to come on our show was last week you tweeted for Rashid Tlaib and Ilhan Omar when they came in. I always say, Ann calls it like she sees it. She'll support, she'll attack Trump when she needs to. She'll give credit to his due.
Right.
And this now was some legislation in favor of the American worker, was it not?
Yes, it was. It's very strange. It was that probably a lot of your listeners are aware of it. Bill 1044 in the House, it's called, as all bills always are, doing the exact opposite of what it's doing. It's something like fairness to American workers. And what it does is, essentially forget about majoring in any STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, Americans. You are going to be fully replaced. The entire country of India will be taking all of those visas. But it's a total scam for, and I'll explain how it does that in a second, but it's a scam for immigration generally. I mean, Democrats and liberals, they're the ones who are saying diversity. No, every H-1B category, it's already 80% Indian. Not only will be filled with Indians, but there will be no limit on this. I mean, do we want diversity or don't we? In other categories, it's supposed to be only 7% from any one country can get in on this or that visa program. But point two, it's a huge gift to the tech firms. There was a flaw in the law. Now I'll explain how it works. There's an idiotic, I'd say, a flaw as if it was inadvertent. There's an idiotic part of the law that was passed, immigration law passed in 1990. Basically, the two tracks coming in, well, I guess there's also, people coming here on vacation and diplomats, but the two basic tracks for coming in as an immigrant is you're just a temporary worker. You're here, you're going to do a job for, a year or so. Guest workers, we always hear about this as if, don't worry, this isn't going to change the country. We just really need, more workers for this. So there's the temporary worker, and then there's the green card. That is what makes you a permanent legal resident. You're on your way on a path to citizenship. Obviously, there are different requirements, those two things. So for the H-1B workers, that is just, you're just coming in to do a job. The employer does not have to prove, I couldn't find an American to do this job.
Is that how hotel industry and some of these sorts of areas get around determining this, where their workers came from?
I think they're H-1B, H-2B or something like, H-2B, I think those are ones that are the unskilled workers.
Right.
These are workers that have some skills. And this is no diss to any of them, but it's dissing what has happened is dissing the American worker and dissing any other countries who want to try to get in as permanent residents, because the slots are going to be filled up pretty fast now. Now, what happened in 1990 was you bring in an H-1B worker, i.e. temporary worker. We don't have to prove that we couldn't get an American to do the job. Once they're here, suddenly now they're allowed to just switch. Oh no, I want a green card after all. Well, no, you're supposed to choose in your country of origin. What do you want to do? Come work temporarily, or do you want to get in on the more rigorous immigration policy of, I want to move to your country and become your fellow citizen? In those cases, the employer has to say, I couldn't find an American to do this job. So it's always been sort of a scam. It's not sort of a scam, but a total scam. And for obvious reasons, with 80% of the H-1B visas, the tech workers, cheap foreign labor, coming in and then instantly being able to convert that to a green card. Mm-hmm. There's a huge backlog of, in this particular case, of Indians applying for the green card. So there's a backlog. The argument, politicians make is, we have to clean up this backlog. No, you have to fix.
Right, exactly.
You have combined temporary workers with permanent residents on their way to becoming our fellow citizens. I have no idea why Rashid,
Tlaib.
what's her last name? Tlaib, thank you. Rashid Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. I think both of them voted against it. Meanwhile, 90% of Republicans voted for it. They're really driving me crazy. You wonder why Trump won. And this is the reason why. He won't do anything about it, but at least he says the right stuff. Whereas these Republicans, they just go out and BS their constituents and, oh, no, this is great. Fairness for American workers.
Right.
Here, we're going to replace all you with Indians.
And, you've had your eye on immigration for a long time. You wrote Adios America, and I thought you had overstated your case in that book. It turned out maybe you understated it. And so, and Mike, I have a question I asked earlier in this program, and maybe you can help me with it. If we have these caravans coming up here that are highly funded and organized, and they travel with hospitals and social workers and people to educate them as how to get through the system and food, and it's a multi-million-dollar operation. If I were to go down and talk to the people that were parts of these caravans, that were coaching these individuals from Central America how to get through our immigration system, what would they tell me they were doing? What is the goal of what they're doing? I was exposed today to something called the Cloward-Piven strategy. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Are these are these people? Of course, they're figure. I was exposed to it for the first time this morning. Are these people
on welfare? That's the basic strategy is get them on welfare. If I could just summarize Cloward-Piven, well, you probably talk to your audience about it, but it used to be, it's just enraging. It used to be, something that people would have to do sometimes, but it was embarrassing to take welfare. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you ever talk to anyone, an adult now, who had to be on welfare at some point, an illness in the family, dad lost his job. I think he's talked about it on air, but Charles Payne on Fox Business, he said, there's a brief period I had to go down and use these food stamps, and I would just pace back and forth and wait for nobody to be in the store, and it was so embarrassing. So Cloward and Piven come along and decide, no, this ought to be, your patriotic duty to get on welfare. Because, much like immigration, they figure the more people on welfare, the more Democratic voters.
Well, they also were trying, they were, as I understand it, they also
flooding the border.
They wanted to overwhelm the system to create a revolutionary change in it, more towards a socialist, guaranteed annual income type system.
Yeah.
But is it something similar that these immigrant advocates are doing? And what's their end game? I don't get it. I just don't understand the logic of what they're up to.
Well, some of them are just, I don't mean to say this about every Democrat who's whining about immigration. Some of them are just useful idiots. But there is a faction in this country of people who don't like America, who want America punished, who always, throughout the Cold War, somehow they would always have a defense for the Soviet Union or any of our enemies. They don't like America. They want to feel self-righteous, never discount the role of self-righteousness, and also, just cheating as a Democrat. I mean, they are bringing in immigrants vote. Historically, overwhelmingly for the Democrats, usually after about 100 years, they start splitting their votes. But unfortunately, we're doing the Sorcerer's Apprentice thing, as we're busy trying to, convert new immigrants to the ways of America. It's a republic, not a democracy. We believe in free speech. There's no such thing as hate speech. Go out and, read up on the candidates. The Democrats, on the other hand, are bringing in another million immigrants every year. Many Democrats, as I may have said before, so sorry if I'm boring you and repeating myself, but it used to be that the Democrats openly admitted that was their strategy. I quote them in Adios America, Roy Teixeira, a big Democratic consultant, he said, this is going to be George McGovern's revenge. We're bringing in immigrants, and that's going to overwhelm the...
But bringing in immigrants...
in California.
Bringing immigrants or expanding immigration is different than just eliminating a border. The utopia they love is Canada. They love Canada. Oh my God, I've never been across a worse border than the Canadian border. Go try to do that if you love Canada. Good luck. Yeah. If you want to work up there, forget it. And by the way, we spoke to somebody earlier who's
marrying a
Canadian, talking about getting citizenship up there. She goes, you have no idea. You have to have a sponsor. You have to pay. It takes years. You have to go through interviews. It's ridiculous how tight their border is.
Yes. And it is ironic and I would say hypocritical to have people like Bernie Sanders, citing the wonders of socialism in places, universal health care in places like Canada, Sweden, Norway. A lot of these countries are changing. But yeah, they have ridiculously homogeneous countries. Not a lot of billionaires, but not a lot of poor people either. That's quite different. So yeah, I do think they want socialism here. And what they want is a country more like Brazil, where they will go, or even, eventually Cuba or the Soviet Union. They're the elites. They'll be fine. They'll get the cheap labor, but there will be no American middle class. There will be no upper middle class in America. You'll have the private plane people and, the rest of us pulling carts.
Pulling carts.
And you see what's happening in California. All the middle class is moving out.
Yeah, we're having a real problem.
It's like starting it here, just in this one state.
When was the last time you were back here, Ann?
Yes. Actually, just a few weeks ago. You were in New York. We seem to be passing in the sky.
I know. We got to get together here, but the homelessness thing out here has got us absolutely mortified. It's just one failed policy after another, and there's such a visible example of that on our streets. And what I keep saying is, and our government is maintaining a hoax that it's actual housing that we need. And what I pointed out, and Leeann astutely pointed out, was we have absorbed somewhere between 800,000 and 1.5 million undocumented immigrants in this city in the last year, and they all found housing.
Yeah.
800,000 million people found housing. Right. They're not on the street.
So they're either knocking the lower tier people who are just on the verge of poverty onto the streets, or you got to get rid of the sanctuary state laws that you allow them in and give them funding.
It's a hoax. Yeah. It's a hoax, and stop the hoax.
All the way around.
Let's talk about the mental health crisis. God.
No, that's absolutely right. It is a mental health issue, often combined with drugs, brought on by drugs, involved with drugs. But yeah, it's a mental health issue, and it's cruel. Once again, a policy that it is billed as if, but we're being nice. No, this is really cruel to the mentally ill. So I get what the number is. That guy Fuller Torrey writes better. Torrey Fuller, I can never remember what his name. But he says something like, it's a shockingly high percentage, 20%, 30% of inmates in our prisons are there because they're mentally ill.
Of course.
That isn't how we should be treating the mentally ill.
Well,
we need to medicate them.
Or if you're going to insist on putting the mentally ill into the correction institute, then the correction institutes must be built in such ways to maintain as to be sort of hospitals within the institutions. And there are one of our LA County supervisors is actually building that.
Yeah.
She's actually building a unit that'll be huge.
But there's a lot of pushback against that too.
I know, of course, doing something right. Are you kidding? No one's allowed to do that.
Because it still includes possible jail, and they just don't want that at all. Empty the jails.
I'm curious. Are you writing another book?
At the moment, I sort of think we're doomed.
You've seemed a little.
What's the point?
You have seemed a little quiet lately, so I figured you were writing something.
No, it's just summer vacation.
All right,
I'm enjoying myself.
Well, and also you think we're doomed. Leeann, I don't like hearing that.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say congratulations to Leeann. Even the great investigative skills of. I'm being a little sarcastic with this. Jane Mayer. Man, they've been investigating you. And all she can produce on this Franken thing is, here are some girls he didn't sexually harass.
I said the same thing. I'm like, I wish I was in that group myself. I wish I wasn't one of them, but, hence here we are.
And the thing that was most telling to me, he is a bully. He loves to humiliate certain women. Even Harvey Weinstein didn't bully every woman he met. But I'm telling you, the most telling detail was, it sounds so silly, but him drawing the horns on the photos. You would have this, he tried to stick his tongue down your throat. Mm-hmm. You push him away. He starts being bitchy to you for the rest of the tour.
Yep.
And that's why I don't care how many comedians they line up to say, he was just kidding on that plane photo. No, you can do that plane photo with someone who is your friend, with someone you're palling around with, and you're both going to laugh about it. Not someone you've been a little bitch to for the last week. That was intentionally cruel and humiliating.
Thank you.
And we appreciate...
She couldn't lay a finger on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing that she said about, Ann tweeted about Republicans versus Democrats? That you tweeted...
Every other accuser. Yeah.
Say that again.
Yeah, every other accuser was Democrat. One of the points, and I meant to tweet this, it's hilarious, this is about your radio station, but she'll spend like 20 paragraphs investigating, the politics of the program director at KABC and didn't want any criticism of Trump. Crap for brains. Listen to KABC. She's talking about, what was that? 2017. I'm sorry, I love your anti-Trumpsters, but half the network is anti-Trumpsters. Listen to KABC, but she'll spend all that time to prove the point that Leeann works for a conservative network, but doesn't notice that every other woman who claimed to have been groped by Al Franken was a fan, was a Democrat, was showing up for a photo op, and suddenly his hand was on their butts.
We'll leave it at that, and we appreciate you being here. It's always we will get together. I'm going to be out in the city a bunch this summer. Are you coming out there?
Yes.
All right, we must do something. Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Ann.
Talk to you soon.
You
Bye-bye.
Ann Coulter, of course, political commentator, author. Let me see if I have any of her. If you ever need to reach Ann Coulter or follow her on Twitter, do you have a Twitter handle there? It's AnnCoulter.com, Coulter, and of course at Ann Coulter on Twitter. We got your calls at 800-222-5222. We'll take a little break first. Leeann, Tweeden, Dr. Drew, Midday Live, AM 790 KBC.